Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're doing something a little bit different because this is a video I had to fly halfway around the world to film. In the middle of 2023, I was in Anaheim, California for the annual NAMM Show, and I had the luck and privilege at that time to visit the G&L Fullerton factory in Orange County, which is really not too far from Anaheim. Now this luck came about because I've done a few videos with the fantastic G&L Dahini tribute guitar in the past year or so on my channel. Links to that elsewhere if you'd ever like to watch any of those. And through the contact to G&L there, I was extended an invitation to come and check out the factory by Dave McLaren and his team. And I did just that, and I've documented as much as I could for you guys in this video. Now, Dave and his team graciously gave me hours of their time, and they explained anything and everything and answered all of the questions that I had. And we went around the factory, we looked at the build process, we watched the master builders in action, and I was frantically trying to video stuff as we went, while also listening to Dave and watching the stuff going on with my own eyes, because that's super important as well. But I've tried to get as many clips as I can. They're not going to be in the right order, I don't think. There's a mishmash of stuff because we really went around seeing what was busy in the factory and looked at things that were going on as they were going on, so to speak. But there are going to be timestamps down there so you can quickly go to any part of the process that you'd like to see. And after we were done in the workshops, we headed back to Leo Fender's old laboratory, where Mr Fender spent the final years of his life coming up with new ideas, building new guitars, and generally being Leo Fender and the visionary that he was. Dave McLaren tells some great stories and some moving stories in there, so if you'd like to watch those, head down to there, and you can also see the final guitar that Leo Fender himself was working on before he passed away. I just want to extend my thanks once more again to Dave McLaren and everyone in the G&L team for taking so much time and being so kind for me on the day there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Plenty more G&L content coming from me in 2024 and beyond, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today I'm outside, sunlight, out of my comfort zone and everything, and I'm in Fullerton, California at the home of G&L Guitars. If you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I recently did a big video on the G&L Dahini Tribute Series guitar, which really blew me away. And through Music Vine, the German distribution partners of G&L, I've now had the chance to come here to the headquarters. I'm actually here for the NAMM Show to work for my day job, but they're just down the road. So we're visiting today with Dave McLaren, the CEO, and his team. I'll get to go inside the factory, look at the production processes, see how these guitars are built, and maybe have a chat with Dave himself. So stick around for that, and now let's go inside.
This way. All of these buildings that look alike on the street, all of these were developed by Leo Fender in the early 70s. He bought this land that we're on, he bought this in 1967. You know, this was 2 years after he had sold the Fender company.
Yeah.
And in Orange County, land development was we were really building out at the time in Orange County here, and buying land and developing income properties was a nice, safe thing for him to do.
Yeah.
So he developed all of these so he could lease all these little spaces out.
Yeah.
And if you'll notice the way our building is, it's really a lot of little front office, warehouse, back. Front office, warehouse, back.
Yeah.
A bunch of these things stitched together.
Yeah.
Well, this was sort of the same way that Fender Company was before. His thinking was, well, if the business should grow, times are good, I can take more of the space. But if things aren't going so good, he could contract and take less space. So
Sure.
I think it might have been a wartime mindset, just thinking about, in case things go badly, can I contract rather than have a big footprint? And actually, he shied away from developing a bigger factory for Fender, and he bought land next to the old building that was 500 South Raymond, which we can go to. It's right nearby here if you want to see it. So he bought a big plot of land next to that Fender factory, and he was intending to build a larger factory, but he was concerned about things in competition and so forth, and just there was sort of political challenges too. So he in the area of California. So I think he was feeling like maybe it was probably getting time that maybe he could sign off. He could sell the company, and not be stuck with all the hassle of running and growing a big company.
Yeah.
Because it had moved much beyond what he really loved to do. He really loved to be designing things, but then much of his time became soaked up in managing the growth of a company. I think that probably helped push him to sell the company. But he had a 10-year non-compete, and in between then, he was developing land, developing these buildings, and of course, then the seeds of Music Man were started with Tommy Walker and Forrest White, who were both ex-Fender people. You know all this story, I imagine, don't you?
Not all of it.
No, really? Oh, well,
no,
this is... The short version is you got a couple of ex-Fender people that would like to start something up with Leo Fender, and Leo Fender has ideas, so it made some sense to start that. But when they started Music Man, that was in Santa Ana, but the time was going to be coming when his non-compete, which was for guitars and basses. They didn't seem to be concerned about the amplifiers. It was guitars and basses.
Okay.
You're not going to own a guitar and bass manufacturing thing for 10 years. That was the thing. But meanwhile, right, developing from that end of the street down here was all these buildings. So this was built, I think, in 1974, this building.
So did Leo Fender purchase the land for this entire street
Yes.
that I walked down to get here?
Yes.
Oh, so it's quite a few buildings.
That's why it's
not
called
just
Fender Avenue.
Yeah, okay, it all makes sense now, yeah, okay.
So this building was kept for his factory.
Yeah.
So this is the spot. So it's a little bit different than the buildings around it, but it's still constructed the same kind of way. Office front, warehouse back.
Yeah.
With little pass-throughs through it. So when you see the old Fender building, you go, oh, I see this is how this is relatable. The vibe is the same because a lot of the layout is a little bit echoes it, you know?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So this place, first job was to build Music Man instruments. So the design of the Music Man, the Stingrays, guitar and bass, that was really well underway in 74 and technically, and into 75 was really when the styling started being worked on. And that was here. That was George Fullerton. And again, another old Fender person who pops up here. And George, he was the stylist. So when you see a lot of the stuff that was here, the Music Man early stuff and the G&L stuff, whatever you think of the looks, that's really George's thing. That was George's hand. He was an artist, where Leo was the technician, George was the artist. So I think they made a great pair.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that happened in here is the design, and then this factory came online in 1976. And then in 1980, it transitioned to making G&Ls.
Okay, wow. Let's take a look inside.
So
Let's see what we can find.
So this place, you find bits of Fender stuff, bits of Music Man stuff, and a lot of G&L stuff, because it kind of echoes the timeline that happened here. These are all two-piece spreads. Ash, alder spreads over there, more ash spreads. These are Okume, I think?
That's correct. That's Okume. This is ash. We have alder on this side. This is alder. We have basswood. And back down this way, we've got some better grades of alder and empress, which is exceedingly light if you'd like to pick up a slab.
I would love to pick up
Yeah,
a slab.
absolutely. So let me, just for reference, here you go. This is, that's a piece of ash right there.
Okay.
Go ahead and I'm gonna hang on to that, and that's
So, yeah,
probably
okay.
around 10 pounds right there is my
Yeah,
guess.
sure.
10.8, and that's typically what we would cut a bass out of. And then this is a piece of empress, which is more similar in weight to.
Oh, that's super light.
right,
Yeah.
Also, yeah. So we've been.
You see the dings on the side of it?
Yeah.
That-
I've seen a bunch of builders in Europe recently have started using a wood called, well, in Germany we call it Paulownia.
Paulownia.
Yeah, is that similar in
Same
weight
thing.
or is it
Another
the same?
name.
It's the same tree. Oh, right. Okay, there we go.
We do have. We actually have neckwood too, sir. Do you wanna?
Oh, yeah, if you want to have
why
a,
not? Yeah.
Okay.
we
so,
could visual action.
Yeah, visualize this. I don't know. That looks good to me right there.
This
too.
this doesn't, because this is the scrap. These are the scrap ones.
Paint grade. Yeah. Okay. So Canadian hard rock maple.
Okay, that looks cool.
Thank you.
Come on.
Well, its job is here is just to reduce moisture.
Yeah.
So it's just to, if it comes in, it's a little moist, you might want to squeak it a little bit out of it.
Yeah.
Give it a little temperature and a little dehumidification. There you go.
Can I ask how long you keep most of the woods in there, or are there some that stay in for longer periods of time? And
It really depends on when it comes in, what is the moisture content, because we have close relationships with our suppliers who are local.
Yeah.
So when they're providing for stuff, they know what we need, and they do a really good job doing it. Sometimes if we have a lot of rain or there's some other seasonal thing that affects that, but right now stuff can come in, and probably within a few days or so, we're probably going to put it in production, just let it acclimate a little bit here, and that's it. So in here, it's mostly old with a little bit of modern.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you look around here, you see the old benches. See machines like this. These were made here. You can see they're constructed the same way of what we call angle iron. And so some of the machines in here were constructed, basically they're recreations of the same thing Leo Fender had working at Fender. He just made more. Maybe might make a couple tweaks because he's he's starting a factory fresh.
Yeah.
But stuff like this you would have seen in the old Fender factory. Benches that look just like this you would have seen in the old Fender factory. So it's very much got that vibe. But modernity requires some CNC machines. So we have Haas machines, and they were made in Oxnard, California.
Yeah. Okay.
So trying to do the best you can, keep that sort of American vibe in here, you know?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And you can see things like old drill presses. These are still from the 1970s. I believe both of those ones are from 1975.
Yeah.
Beautiful American drill presses made in Pittsburgh, and they're still going.
Wow.
They're serviceable. They're not made to be disposed. I love gear like that.
Yeah.
Guys, this looks good today. We got stuff that looks good today.
15 years, 17 years. I forgot how long he's been doing this.
It's fascinating just to watch it, you know, just a master in action sort of thing.
When I do it, it's a lot slower.
How often do you get hands-on and do build stuff? Is it regular or?
No,
do you have,
3-4 times a year I'm trying to do it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it much more than used to, because it's fun to get your hands up inside of everything, you know? And then when I'm doing that, I'm also getting in ideas as I'm doing. So I like to do a project build, even if it's based on something, you know, like I've got an old body or something like that inspired it. I've got an old body and it's 40 years old and I want to build the rest of it. You know, I like to do those kind of projects where I start with something and then I got to come up with the rest and build whatever I don't have. And that's the fun part of it. So I'm matching old stuff and new stuff, but it's all under the same roof and it feels right.
Yeah, sure.
I really love doing that.
Yeah.
So, but it gets me out in the shop to do stuff, and then I pick up ideas from people. I learn things.
Yeah.
You know, because all the people who do this every day are going to be vastly better at than I am going to be. Yeah. You know, so just the other day I learned a nice little cheat for slotting my nuts faster. So it was like, oh, that's cool.
Well, there you go. I also think it's great when you've got, you know, the boss, the CEO, you know, the chief of the company, and they know how to use the machinery, they know the different production processes. That's got to help, right?
It does, but I think they also are going to make sure that I don't do anything too crazy. Don't let me on the CNC machines. I don't know how to do anything on those. I do know how to film stuff in there while getting showered with chips, which is fun, but I can punch up a couple of things, but I can't program any of that stuff, or, you know.
Sure.
But I like sanding stuff, shaping stuff. I like the hand stuff that I can relate to. You know, that's more fun for me anyway.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall because there's the different steps, so I'm trying to add it up or so. I'm going to take a shot about 30 minutes or so, because once it comes from over there, it comes off the machine, and then you'll see it gets a nut put into it. We get a couple of things, you know, frets and so forth. Then it comes over here, and it's really taking the machineness out and putting the hand feel in.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And we had a guy here who gave himself a black eye with the neck. He was buffing it and it caught the wheel and something fling up. And his hand, maybe it was his own hand, but he gave himself a black eye.
Oh no, yeah. Learning process, I bet it never happened again.
So you start getting a little cocky and you're not that good.
Yeah. Here we go. That was it. You were super. How long do you generally work on the frets for on each guitar?
It depends on like the instrument. Like sometimes we get these frets that are really thin. The X jumbo frets, so they take a little bit more time to go through the material.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we get some of these tall and narrow frets, which takes a little bit less, which takes about a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the instrument, plus how many frets. Typically basses go a little bit longer just because you have more real estate to work with and leveling. So instead of like a small movement like this for a regular guitar, we have all this area to cover. So it just takes a little longer. So generally, I would say about just frets, 15 minutes maybe.
15 minutes, yeah, okay.
Yeah, just about.
I love that shirt.
This is our L1000 Series 750 5-string, and the Series 750 recorder refers to 3/4 of an inch string spacing.
Mm.
So it's our wide 5.
Yeah,
But rather than call it 19 millimeter as people do,
yeah,
I'm not calling that. I'm calling it 3/4 of an inch because Leo Fender defined that with his first precision bass.
yeah,
So it would seem it would be convenient for people if I called it 19 millimeter, but in principle I can't do that because all that means is your 5 strings have the same string spacing at the bridge as a 4-string traditionally did, Leo Fender 4-string. And that was 3/4 of an inch, 0.750 of an inch.
oh yeah.
So I call it Series 750.
What is the finish that we're looking at here? 'Cause
That's called
that is
Andromeda.
a spectacular finish.
It's a pretty hip color, and the thing I think people like about it is if you're on stage, you can lay back and it's and it looks like a black bass or something. Maybe there's a little bit of sparkle, but if you step into the light or the stage light hits
and it
boom.
The light.
Yeah, you got all these colors, so you can step out or you can be kind of conservative.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you got a full metal flake thing, it's going, look at me, no matter what. you know?
Yeah. As someone who's tried and failed making overdrive pedals in the past, no, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Pedals are hard. They're small.
Yeah.
It's micro stuff.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been with G&L for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
I started out in tribute, their import line.
Yeah.
And then after about a year, they moved me over here and just been building out the basses and guitars.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Very cool.
Those knobs were designed by George Fullerton.
Oh, really?
They look, I say they look like something from Tiffany's.
They are pretty spectacular.
Feel good.
And they feel great. I love to think that they nerded out so hard on the knobs.
They definitely spent a lot of time on the knobs, I think.
And it had to look like, and it also had to be consistent with the aesthetic of the rest of the sort of Music Man and G&L vibe, which was kind of like this chunky, solid looking things, the bridges and, you know, it had a vibe about it.
Yeah. Is this a brand new model? Am I allowed to?
I understand this is coming up. How about I just say that?
Yeah.
I understand this is coming up. I think it's rad. What I really love about this is I knew the goal was to do a 24 fret Rampage thing, right, as a platform. But that body that was designed by George Fullerton, its proportions, I liked how it had kind of a little bit bigger butt. I just loved the way, think of the Jerry Cantrell look, you know? I just loved that. And I was really afraid of when we scallop this out a little bit more, are we gonna lose that vibe? Will it be not recognizable anymore?
Yeah.
And I think you could see we took more out, but at a glance, especially with the headstock, it still looks like what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which would be like the Rampage and Super Hawk and G&L Invader of the 1985 on. But it's cool. The main thing is that it's not difficult to do the architecture of it. It's important to get the style right.
Yeah.
Where it's still, it had to look like, still has to look like it could be, you know, a Rampage, you know? It had to have that chunky vibe. And I think it still got it. I really like how this turned out. And a little bit different on the back. So there's, it's not too weird by some people's standards, you know, but it's accessible. That should be fun.
And Fishman Fluence pickups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I expect that we'll have a version with some like nice traditional Alnico pickups on it, you know, and then this one for people who want to go this way.
Yeah.
And that's before I get whatever weirdness in my land.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'll do, but I might end up putting classic Alnico humbuckers and an early style CLF Research buffer pre.
Yeah.
Which all that is, it's not about tone shaping. It's just about, I'm just going to grab that signal from the pickup. I'm going to pump it up a little bit. And I'm going to shove it down that chord. So the chord's not going to strangle you. That's what the buffer was, but it wasn't really about tone shaping, where this does a lot in there, you know? And it's a rad thing. It's pretty cool. I had a fun time playing with this.
Carmen was cutting his hand and slipped.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's how he got the Band-Aid on his hand.
Yep.
Carmen, who still works here, was cutting his fingernail and she slipped and cut his skin. And he got a Band-Aid on him, and then they took the photo. Really? Trimming his nails.
Not a very rock and roll injury, is it really? But, I mean,
Actually, it might be very rock and roll.
Yeah, you haven't met Carmen.
true. True.
It could have happened on Spinal Tap. So Leo's keeping a watchful eye on things up there as well.
Yeah.
Doing what he loves.
Go on, gimbal, go up. Yeah. There he is, looking down.
It's a little messy, I told you, but it's probably because I've been doing more of my projects lately, and my projects often involve trying to find parts. And so when I'm trying to find parts, I might make more of a mess of things, but I've got to tidy up a little bit. But finding old parts to make a project guitar or a project bass come together, it's the greatest thing. I love doing it. I also like to take pictures of old instruments or prototype instruments, and I often do it here in his favorite, what I call the favorite chair, or the greatest hits chair.
So what are we looking at here? An El Toro.
This is from 1989, and the shell is from the body. The platform is from El Toro, but he was experimenting with some single coil pickups here with the magnetic field design.
Yeah.
With the single pole. So this is going to have kind of a jazzy, but maybe a bit more spiky sound. But this is just an example, one of the many that I share. And we can take a look at some other cool stuff in here.
Yeah.
This is the last instrument that Leo Fender worked on. It's 25.5-inch scale, but it's tuned an octave lower, so it's kind of a baritone here.
Yeah, it's got like so it's basics in terms of being an octave down.
Kind of down.
But what's the scale length? It looks like a short scale.
It's still 25.5. But he's custom made everything on this thing. This is, one-off, custom machined saddle lock bridge where everything's a little bit beefed up because we've got bigger strings on there.
Yeah.
And the tuning machines were made by Bob Spurzl to be extra beefy guitar tuners for it.
And do you know what the intended goal was here? Was the model being created, or was it a one-off thing, or just a fun thing to see what he could build? Or
well, no one really knows, and that's part of the fun. Okay, I'm gonna tell us a bit of a story time, I guess, here because apart from what this is, we could see what it is. Okay, well, it's an octave lower. It's still 25.5. We could see we've got these paired up magnetic field design coils. So these could be used as humbuckers. Although this is a normal 5-way, he might have been thinking about other ways that he might use different combinations of coils with this.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing was to get a platform down where engineering-wise, he's got a body and a neck, beefy tuners, a larger bridge, pickups, so he's got the fundamentals there. At this point of the development, this would be sort of like a phase 1 complete.
Yeah.
Phase 2 might be, okay, what are we going to do with switching and things like that? But this was completed, as we say, it's like this was finished. Wait, let me start that part again, because it gets me a little choked up too, because it's weird. You can still see the calendar there. It's March 1991, right? So Leo was working on this, and everyone was following orders, but no one knew what he was really doing. Yeah. They didn't know where he was going with it. And it was all he could do to hang on, to stay alive long enough to see this put together. In fact, this was put together and it was brought to him, and they put it here on this bench, and he was sitting in that chair right there, and he was just looking at it. He's just looking at it. And by then his Parkinson's disease was bad enough that he couldn't drive and people had to care for him, but his very productive brain was trapped in a dysfunctional body. It's kind of like the opposite of the Alzheimer's, where they could look okay, but they don't know what day it is. Yeah. Leo had a brilliant brain, still trapped in a dysfunctional body, but he insisted on, he came to work still at least 5 days a week then, right towards the end. So someone would have to pick him up, take him home, and when this was completed, it was brought into him, and he was staring at it, and it was early afternoon, it was time to go home. And when they came to take him home, he didn't want to leave. He just wanted to keep looking at this instrument. They finally kind of coaxed him to pick him up, and they brought him out, and they put him in the front seat of the Cadillac to take him home. And when they get home, Leo didn't want to get out of the car. And in fact, as he was driving away, Ed Seabest, who was our foreman at the time, he said it was weird. He had his hands outstretched onto the dashboard like this. He was sitting there like this. He said it was weird. He was like hanging on like a cat. They get him home, and then he won't get out of the car. So they have to go to the door, and mind you, it's raining too. So people are a little bit irritated. He's kind of uncooperative. And they go to the door, and they get his wife, Phyllis, and Phyllis comes out, and she coaxes him in. Come on, come on. She gets him in the house, and he laid down, take a nap as he would when he gets home. And as she turned to leave the room, he grabbed her arm, and he pulled her close, and he whispered to her, "I've given all I can to the musicians. It's time to go home now." So what we think is he hung on long enough to see something that was in progress, as far as he could. And then when this was done, he knew he couldn't stick around any longer, but he didn't want to go home. He wanted to die right here, in the place he loved, doing what he loved. I mean, not that, he loved his wife, but this was his place.
Yeah.
He loved it, and we think he hung on long enough to see this put together. And then what I said, described it was like resisting arrest. They wanted to take him home, but he didn't want to go.
Yeah.
He wanted the curtains to close on his life's work right here.
Yeah.
And so that's why this instrument's I think it's very special, not only because, that it's his last instrument, but that it was prototype, it was developmental. There was so much unique one-off stuff. There was a lot of expense put into this, a lot of effort to get it this far. And then to know that he knew he couldn't go any further. I think that's very touching.
Yeah.
So once he was gone, no one knew what was going on with this instrument. And it was a couple years later, I think, a year or two later, that we were making an advertisement. And the advertisement had this picture of his lab chair. And it said, "The man is gone now, but his spirit is still with us." And at the time they were taking the photograph, George Fullerton was here. My brother Johnny was here, who you'll meet if you haven't already. And the photographer's there, and his wife. And as they were getting ready to take that photo, setting up, getting the lights and everything going on in there, this instrument was in here, and my brother picked it up, and he asked George, "What did Leo want to do with this?" And just as George began to respond that he didn't know, I don't know, all of these lights in the ceiling went out by themselves. And George got freaked out, and he said, I think John said, I think we're not supposed to be in here, and I think we better go now. So George, he said, he just went like white as a sheet, like he was feeling weird in here. Then the lights, I think that maybe they came back on by themselves, but the thing I remember learning at the time is Leo worked in here by himself with the door closed. There's no windows in here. This door could be closed.
Yeah.
You can see he keeps it very bright in here. He has 3 large fixtures for the size of the room. So it would always be bright in here. There's like no shadows anywhere. So if he drops stuff, it's easy to find. But these also have their own circuit breakers, not shared with the other things in the factory. So if the factory, something out there should trip the circuit breaker, it's not going to affect what's going on here. So he did what he could to make sure that the light always stays on in here.
Yeah.
But the lights went off, not just one, but 2 circuit breakers. So if one goes off, there's still the other one.
Yeah.
So they went to go inspect the box, and there's a little dust. Nobody touched it. So somehow these things flicked off by themselves. And that story didn't affect me too much until about the year 2000. It was the time we were talking about doing our G&L Tribute Series models, which is an import line, obviously.
Yeah.
We've got cool stuff, like the pickups that we send over there, like on the Doheny.
Yeah.
But it's an import guitar, import G&L, and we're seriously discussing that. And I remember giving a tour to a couple of guys from Korea, and they came in suits, as still was customary of the time, And I brought them in here, and I'm telling him about the lab and so forth. And as I was doing so, these lights went out. So when the lights went out, my first thought is, those guys are screwing with me, right? Don't start doing that now. So I blasted out that door, and I'm looking around, and I see a couple people working, but I don't see what's going on. I didn't see anybody that was going to screw with me. So I run down there towards my brother's office, and then I burst into my brother's office, and he and Ed Seabest, the same guy who's described Leo, like hanging on like a cat, they were arguing about something. And I burst in and I said, "Are you guys fucking with me?" And they said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "The lights went out." And Gary Drake, another guy who'd been here for years, he goes, "Something finally happened to you." So I run back here, and the lights had come back on, and my guests wondered what, their host, the lights went out, okay, whatever. And I run out the door, and then the lights come back on, and I come back a couple minutes later. But I had to catch them. If they were doing that to me, I had to catch them, but it wasn't them. So these lights did the same thing, and nothing else was affected. I took it as a sign that he knows what I'm doing, what I'm considering, and don't screw it up, because that's my name. That's the way I took it. So it's like, okay, if we're gonna do this, and put the fear of God in me, that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That everything we've done has been cool. What if he doesn't like this?
Yeah.
So I would talk to him. I would come in here and talk to him. It's the best I could do. Come into the place where it feels like his spirit's strongest, and talk. And maybe I get an idea, a thought, whatever it is. So I would come in here and I would give him my best pitch as to why this would be good for the company, good for the brand, and more of his distinctive features could reach people that otherwise couldn't afford things. People that could have an ASAT special that otherwise couldn't afford that. That Leo did cool features and models here that would reach a much broader audience if we had this model we call G&L Tribute Series. So after the lights going out with the two guys from a Korean factory, after that scared the hell out of me, I was very careful about how we approached it to make it feel really kind of in the heart that this is as legit as we're going to be about doing an import line.
Yeah.
Because I'm the only one who has to sort of answer to Leo Fender. His place, this is his place, but we just kept this room closed up. It was like nobody had the heart to do anything. You might go in looking for something, but it was still his place. It was the spiritual center of the company.
Yeah.
And then it was only maybe about 5 years ago, I think, that I started doing work in here, doing little project things in here, using some of his tools in a way that I felt awkward about before. And then, because I didn't want to feel like I'm some kind of imposter, I'm sitting in his chair. It's just, there's Leo Fender. But if I'm going to be the sort of the caretaker, if you will, of his legacy and his things here, if I'm using them and sharing them like on social media, then more people can experience his vibe, his scene, to the best of my ability, can share what he might be thinking about as he's working on things. So a caretaker or a custodian maybe is how I view it.
Yeah.
In no way want to try to compete with that in any way. Just celebrate it in a way that I think would be consistent with his vision.
Yeah. Celebrate the legacy, keep it alive,
and there's
respect it most of all.
There's another thing that I think is really cool is when he knew he didn't have much time left, when the Parkinson's started coming on, he spent all his time designing. Like all the possible things that he could conceive in a short period of time, knocking them out. So we have drawings, we have prototype parts. So I think he left it such that whoever else, assuming I get the McLarens and whoever else is going to come after me is going to find a lot of stuff if they want to use it. Yeah. I've left you many things for you to check out. Maybe they weren't fully done, but it's a lot of clues and things. Whole drawings of things that I didn't know existed popped up years later. Like, check this out. This drawing is from the late 60s. This is from the early days of CLF research, which is Clarence Leo Fender research. And there's another one under there. This is 1969. So he was still working as a consultant for Fender. CLF research, Leo Fender was still doing that. And this instrument had technical developments on it, bridge tech, and he was going to have a preamp on it. This is late 60s. They were looking for, I believe, a 1970 launch. But this didn't get completed. The tech styling was done, but the tech wasn't completed. And by that time, the relationship had gotten kind of weird, where Fender was looking to make more of the mainstay instruments and not looking for expensive technical innovation. You know, we're not looking for new frontiers right now. We need to make more Strats and Tellies and P basses and J basses, you know, that kind of stuff. So this just sat away for decades, and then pulled it out and decided we're going to finish the song in Leo's style. That's what I love about this thing. When he left this thing, he didn't just leave us stuff in those last few years. He left other things that were pursued and then stopped. Left it in the drawer. So whoever's coming in, we'll find stuff that he did in the last few years, and we find stuff he did in his early years at CLF Research, just post Fender. So this became our Espada guitar. We just completed the pickups in magnetic field design. We put a saddle lock bridge on it, the PTB, and the preamp became just our standard G&L buffer preamp. So we just finished the song, as I say, in his style.
Amazing.
50 years later.
Yeah. Like you said, keeping the legacy alive. With respect, you know, with keeping the vision there, and it's a tough position to be in, right? I mean, you've got this legendary name, and you've got the stuff that you created, and yet you're a modern day company, and at the same time, maybe you have your own innovations and stuff, and it's like preserving his legacy, continuing what he started, but also maybe trying to bring your own DNA to it too in the most respectful way. It's a unique challenge, which I think you guys have. I hope that makes sense. I was sort of waffling there a bit. But
and it did take some years to get over it.
Yeah.
But there came a point where my brother and I, it's like, wait a minute, we're getting to be the old people here.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a long time. We knew a lot of influential people, you know, so it's like, wait a minute, we're very much an essential part of the fabric of this thing.
Yeah.
We're the best, we're the people that people, how should I phrase this? I think to a great extent we are, and I hope to be, the kind of people that they would want to be custodians of Leo Fender's place here and his legacy. You know, we're to be respectful of it, develop it, be faithful to kind of a vision and a vibe. And I think in recent years, I'm trying to get a little bit more closer to that essence. You know, spending more time in here, I think, was helpful.
Yeah.
Because whatever's in the ether, feels strongest in here.
Yeah, there's a connection, right? I mean, even I feel it. There's something different about this room. There's an atmosphere, an ether, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. You could experiment with, you know, a lift on there, different pickup positioning, different combinations of pickups. And this is interesting because this is a magnetic field design prototype. So this is from 1979, and this one has a Stingray guitar shape because the idea was that the magnetic field design pickups would be the next features for Music Man.
Yeah.
It was only because there was kind of a people problem that there was a separation. Otherwise, the stuff that was the first G&Ls was just going to be the next features, you know, that was going to be available in a Music Man line.
Sure, yeah.
So obviously they were preparing a magnetic field design pickup for a Stingray guitar, but it ended up being a different shape cover. Well, just the ends shape are different, and the used in the F100 guitar.
Yeah.
This one began life in the 60s with the Fender bridge. So you can see we have 60s, and then we have 70s, and then we have some 80s with magnetic field design. So this thing is just it's a tester. But the cool thing I think about is it's where the brands melt away and you see one man's journey.
Yeah.
Does he need did he need to change this because he had a Music Man neck? No, it was perfectly adequate for what he's doing here. This is just rough testing.
Yeah.
Served perfectly fine, works fine. And then once he's doing his G&L magnetic field design stuff, did he need to change the neck? No, the neck works fine. It's not about the brands then. It was one man's journey. So you can see 60s, 70s, 80s, all in one thing. I just think that's the coolest. But this is just the office. This is just the business side of town. And it's messy right now as we've got a bunch of photographs to sort out. But I love going through and seeing different scenes with different people. I mean, just, you know, here's his house, here's his boat. Freddie Tavares.
You guys looking to, you know, create?
I mean, Freddie Fender. I mean,
Freddie Fender. Any like photo books or releases or anything? Will any of this be made public at any point, or
maybe? I mean,
you're just going through it at this moment in time.
I mostly just wade through it because I want to see if there's something I feel like posting.
Yeah.
You know, that other stuff I figure I might get to a little bit later in years.
Yeah.
Like things are too. There's a lot of stuff I want to do, but you can't do it now because it's too busy in the moment.
Yeah.
So I have to hope that, you know, I'll be around, you know, live long enough that I can be able to get to doing some of that stuff where other people are taking care of stuff that I don't have to worry about, and I can just spend more time doing this.
Yeah.
You know? Because I mean, it needs to be tidied up, but at least if at least I can take things and share them, you know. And this is 50s. This is 1951 actually. This whole book is 1951 here, February. There's his dad.
Monty.
Monty Fender. I mean, where else are you going to see Leo Fender's dad? You know?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where he's at there, but he loved to take pictures of things, especially if there was processes, you know, how things are made, how things are done. He would have loved to take pictures because it could be something on there that has inspired him. So he goes, you know, it's an idea I want to mental note, take back.
Yeah.
But this is a man's personal desk. So this is where he becomes more of a real figure to people, where he's like, wow, okay, he's a man, he had a desk, like everybody else.
Yeah.
He had drawers full of stuff, phone enhancer. A lot of his files that he would keep close to him, that he'd keep handy, investments and things like that would be right here. Even files on people that he'd loaned money to.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Some of them well-known names. We'll leave them alone. Anyway, so obviously in the later years, his photography was more modern. And there was a store nearby here, Cal's Cameras, that would call him up whenever they got the newest stuff, because Leo had loved camera equipment. There's his wife, Phyllis, in the backyard. Just looks like she's scrubbing a bird bath. But he's just taking pictures of stuff. His dog. So you get to see when you're in somebody's office, and you can kind of see it's like more dimension to them.
Yeah.
Here we get to see, oh, what was his home life like? What does his house look like? What did his wife look like? What's his dog look like? You know, his cars. He took pictures of everything around him. You know, he loved. I don't think he was the greatest photographer. I don't think he did, but he loved the gear.
Yeah.
He nerded out on the gear. So his house had a dark room built into it. This is inside his dark room built into his house. And a pair of his spectacles.
Peepers.
Just sitting on some of his notes. These are obviously what became the Comanche pickups.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it puts an element of humanity to a person. You know, when all you can do is read about this icon of the industry, you know, this guy who created the most famous guitar models, the most revered amps, and then you see this stuff, you realize he was
A human being.
He was a man underneath it all as well.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating, and I feel very privileged to be able to see this stuff close up. You know, it's a one thing to see it on Instagram or whatever, but another thing to be standing here, to be seeing it, feeling it, allowed to touch stuff.
Did you sit in the?
It's amazing.
Did you sit in the greatest hits chair? And you got to do that.
If I'm allowed
Oh,
to,
please
it
do.
would be my pleasure.
Please do.